The British modernist novelist and short story author Joseph Conrad was one of the finest stylists ever to have written English. That's achievement enough, but it's all the more remarkable because Conrad was not a native English speaker. In fact, English was his third language after Polish and French, and he didn't learn it until he was in his early 20s. In Project 4, Read Out Loud, in the Advanced Communication Series manual, Specialty Speeches, Lloyd Smith will read a selection from one of Conrad's greatest works, Heart of Darkness.
In Heart of Darkness, Joseph Conrad created a fictionalized account of a journey up the Congo River that he actually made in the late 1890s. That was a time very different from our own. There weren't any video capabilities, and photography itself was relatively new. That meant that no one had any mental images of anything that he or she had not seen for him or herself. Writers had to use diction, which is word choice and sentence structure, to create images that their readers could actually visualize, see in their mind's eye for the first and sometimes for their only time. In this passage that I'm going to read, Conrad's narrator, a sea captain named Marlowe, is piloting a steamboat up the Congo River. He's on a mission to rescue an ivory trading company manager named Kurtz. He doesn't realize it, but he's also beginning 3 journeys into darkness. The first is a physical journey up the Congo River. The second is a temporal journey back into a time before mankind had conquered nature. And the third and most important one is a psychological journey he's making into the darkness that lies within himself and by extension within all of us. From Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. Going up that river was like traveling back to the earliest beginnings of the world, when vegetation rioted on the earth and the big trees were kings. An empty stream, a great silence, an impenetrable forest. The air was warm, thick, heavy, sluggish. There was no joy in the brilliance of sunshine. The long stretches of waterway ran on, deserted, into the gloom of overshadowed distances. On silvery sandbanks, hippos and alligators sunned themselves side by side. The broadening waters flowed through a mob of wooded islands. You lost your way on that river as you would in a desert and butted all day long amid shoals, trying to find the channel, till you thought yourself bewitched and cut off forever from everything you had known once, somewhere, far away, in another existence perhaps. There were moments when one's past came back to one, as it will sometimes when you had not a moment to spare to yourself. But it came in the shape of an unrestful and noisy dream, remembered with wonder amongst the overwhelming realities of this strange world of plants and water and silence. And this stillness of life did not in the least resemble peace. It was the stillness of an implacable force brooding over an inscrutable intention. It looked at you with a vengeful aspect. I got used to it. I did not see it anymore. I had no time. I had to keep guessing at the channel. I had to discern, mostly by inspiration, the signs of hidden banks. I watched for sunken stones. I was learning to clap my teeth smartly before my heart flew out of my mouth when I shaved by a fluke some infernal, sly old snag that would have ripped the life out of the tin pot steamboat and drowned all of us. I had to keep a lookout for the signs of dead wood we could cut up in the night for the next day's steaming. When you have to attend to things of that sort, to the mere incidents of the surface, the reality, I tell you, fades away. The inner truth is hidden, luckily, but I felt it all the same. I felt often its mysterious stillness watching me at my monkey tricks, just as it watches all of us performing our respective tightrope tricks for what is it, half a crown a tumble? I beg your pardon. I forget the heartache which makes up the rest of the price. And indeed, what does the price matter if the trick be well done? You do your tricks very well. And I didn't do badly either, since I managed not to sink that steamboat on my first trip. It's a wonder to me yet Imagine a blindfolded man set to drive a van over a bad road. I sweated and shivered over that business considerably, I can tell you. After all, four sailors, to scrape the bottom of the thing that's supposed to float all the time under his care is the unpardonable sin. No one may know it, but you never forget that thump. It's like a blow to your heart. You remember it, you dream of it, you wake up at night and think of it years after, and go hot and cold all over. I don't pretend to say that steamboat floated all the time. More than once, she had to wade for a bit with 20 cannibals splashing around and pushing. Oh yes, the cannibals. We'd enlisted some of those chaps on the way for a crew. Fine fellows, cannibals, in their place. They were men one could work with, and I'm grateful to them. And after all, they did not eat each other in front of my face. They had brought along a provision of hippo meat, which went rotten right away, and made the mystery of the wilderness stink in my nostrils. I can sniff it right now. I had the manager on board 3 or 4 company workers. Sometimes we came upon a station close by the bank, clinging to the skirts of the unknown, and white men rushed out of a tumble-down hovel with great gestures of joy and surprise and welcome. They had the appearance of being held there captive by a spell. The word ivory would ring in the air for a while, and then on we went again into the silence, along the empty reaches, round the still bends, beneath the high walls of our winding way, reverberating in hollow claps the ponderous beat of the stern wheel. Trees, millions and millions of trees, massive, immense, running up high, and at their foot, hugging the bank against the stream, crept a little begrimed steamboat like a sluggish bug crawling on the floor of a lofty portico. It made you feel very small, very lost, and yet it was not altogether depressing, that feeling. After all, if you were small, the grimy beetle crawled on, which was just what you wanted it to do. Where the others imagined it crawled to, I do not know. To some place where they expected to get something, I'll bet. For me, it crawled toward Kurtz, exclusively. But when the steam pipes started leaking, we crawled very slowly. The reaches opened before us and closed behind us, as if the forest had stepped leisurely across the water to bar the way of our return. We penetrated deeper and deeper into the heart of darkness. It was very quiet there. At night, sometimes the roll of drums behind the curtain of trees would run up the river and remain sustained faintly as if hovering in the air high over our heads till the first break of day. Whether it meant war, peace, or prayer, we could not tell. The dawns were heralded by the descent of a chill stillness. The woodcutters slept, their fires burned low, the snapping of a twig would make us start. We were wanderers on a prehistoric earth, on an earth that wore the aspect of an unknown planet. We could have fancied ourselves the first of men, taking possession of an accursed inheritance, to be subdued at the cost of profound anguish and of excessive toil. But suddenly, as we struggled around a bend, there would be a glimpse of walls, of peaked grass roofs, a burst of yells, a whirl of black limbs, a mass of hands clapping, feet stamping, bodies swaying, eyes rolling, under the droop of heavy and motionless foliage. The steamer toiled along slowly on the edge of a black and incomprehensible frenzy. The prehistoric man was cursing us, praying to us, welcoming us. Who could tell? We were cut off from the comprehension of our surroundings. We glided past like phantoms, wondering and secretly appalled, as sane men would before an enthusiastic outbreak in a madhouse. We could not understand because we went too far, and we could not remember because we were traveling in the night of the first ages, of those ages that are gone, leaving hardly a sign and no memories. The earth seemed unearthly. We are all accustomed to look upon the shackled form of a conquered monster. But there, you could look at a thing monstrous and free. It was unearthly, and the men were, no, they were not inhuman. Well, you know, that was the worst of it. The suspicion of their not being inhuman. It would come slowly to one. They howled and leaped and spun, made horrid faces, but what thrilled you was just the thought of their humanity, like yours. The thought of your remote kinship with this wild and passionate uproar. Ugly. Yes, it was ugly enough, but if you were man enough, you would admit to yourself that there was in you just the faintest trace of a response to the terrible frankness of that noise. A dim suspicion of there being meaning in it which you so remote from the first ages could comprehend. And why not? The mind of man is capable of anything because everything is in it. All the past as well as all the future. What was there after all? Joy, fear, sorrow, devotion, valor, rage? Who can tell? But truth. Truth stripped of the cloak of time. Let the fool gape and shudder. The man knows and can look on without a wink, but he must at least be as much of a man as those men on the shore. He must meet that truth with his own true stuff, with his own inborn strength. Principles? Principles won't do. Acquisitions, clothes, pretty rags, rags that would fly off at the first good shake. No, you need a deliberate belief. An appeal to me in this fiendish row, was there? Very well. I heard it, I admit, but I have a voice too. And for good or evil, mine is the speech that cannot be silenced. Of course, a fool, what with sheer fright and fine sentiment, is always safe. I was not.